Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is what happens when you go into lockdown into your house for a little while, desire to play Dungeons, Dragons, and Borderlands at the same time, realize that would make a kick-ass game, also realize that you haven't actually made a game in a little while, and proceed to present fan service to nerds like myself everywhere in the form of Borderlands 3.5. And according to a completely reliable source, there are 87 bazillion guns to loot, and I desire to try every single one of them because violence is very, very fun. Let's give it a go. Yes, I do mean literally every single gun in the entire game that I come across. If you read that and thought I was going to be gunning through the Wonderlands by using however many godforsaken weapons are actually in this game until all is said and done, then you seem like the sort of person who has the face for radio, the voice for a newspaper, and the brains for neither. You had so much potential. Difficulty is irrelevant, although if you must know, I chose balance because some of these challenges kick my ass enough as is, and I don't desire to get to the point where I only have 2 brain cells fighting for 3rd place. I see that enough on Twitter. We don't need to talk about how much time I spent just choosing my character class alone, just that in the end, I went with the stabby class because it seemed the most vicious. Create a character in Wonderlands is different from your normal Borderlands game. Instead of choosing a pre-made character already built from the ground up, you can create your own from top to bottom, almost nearly half as fleshed out as the WWE 2K video games. I decided to randomize my character, but every time it chose for me, I hated it. The colors were wrong, the facial hair was trash, and eventually I just created the character anyway. I spent a solid 3 hours going through the various choices. This person had to be perfect, and this was my creation, my own video game protagonist. I went with the name Aruthor. If you know where that's from, you deserve an Oreo. I thought bunkers and badasses, which is the equivalent to our own Dungeons and Dragons but with guns, was supposed to be played in a party of at least more than me. I mean, I don't mind being the sole proprietor in this campaign, but having a robot with emotions fighting by my side would have reminded me less about myself when I play online first-person shooters. After literally dropping into the fantasy world, almost immediately we were granted magical sight and hearing because Tiny Tina is the bunker master, so why not? I grabbed an axe from this tree stump, making this my very first weapon of many in this challenge, and I used it to chop up my dinner tonight. A gun soon followed, which reminds me way too much of a pistol crossbow hybrid, so I immediately loved it. Now that a real fight presented itself, allow me to explain how we'll be proceeding forward. If I find a new weapon of any capacity, I use it until another weapon drops. This goes for guns, melee weapons, and spells. Should have mentioned that earlier. Even if it's legendary and another item drops 5 seconds later, I must equip that new weapon. I've already proven shields are redundant to everything a few months ago, and unlike your fists, they are not considered lethal weapons. Funny story, I looked up that question on Google when editing the Red Dead 2 video 6 months ago, and a certain 3-letter agency paid a visit to my house. Pertaining to chests and boss fights, to make it simple for my chimp brain to handle, I can choose any 1 item per gear type of my choice that drops. If 2 pistols appear in a chest, for example, I can choose which one I want, since they appeared at the same time. If these barrels aren't plot devices to progress the story, then I don't know what is, but I like blowing shit up, so I was cool with it. A wondrous invasion overtook a small village, so I used some of my infinite ammo that always seems to drop everywhere to eradicate every walking bone in front of me. Not because I felt like being the hero, but because I needed to get to level 2. You begin to get skill points not at level 5 thankfully, but by the time this village is liberated from the second most boring of Minecraft mobs. This person's name was Peasant Ass Peasant, I got some laughs out of that, and this D20 granted me a submachine gun, thereby retiring my crossbow pistol hybrid. I should also point out that I will not be covering every single time that I replace a weapon, because if I did, I'd be saying it at least 600 more times, and neither yourself, the 15 other people who will watch this video, or even myself, care to go through that whatsoever. Inside these castle ruins lied the most evil glowy-eyed boned, dangly jaw-boned monster of the first 20 minutes of the game, ribs. I do enjoy some ribs, especially St. Louis style, but I can tell when someone isn't from Missouri, so I just killed him and took all his loot. Most of the damage I took in this fight I did on my own volition, so that tells you enough. The idea was to seal the big bad video game antagonist away for good before he could escape, but that's boring as all get out, so I let him go free. Where's the fun in a 25-minute quest line? I'm looking at you, coiled captors. The overview for the Wonderlands overworld was supposed to be a neat cinematic experience, but those nasty frame drops kept plaguing the cutscene, and don't say it's my PC specs being garbage. I have a 3090 in there that I paid way too much for last year. My favorite part of this place is the giant soda can spilling out Fanta Orange into a river. Channeling your inner Pokemon is what games like this should do more often. I mean, a wild battle in the tall grass with a reward at the end once you beat some ass is gratification if I've ever seen it. That big, scary, and pink palace back there was our designated sanctuary to grab and sell guns, teleport wherever we please, and tip Moxie a bunch of money for her really nice gun she gives out. It wouldn't be a sanctuary if somebody was unleashing hell from the giant H in the sky. Wait, wrong game. My bad. Instead, there's a giant skeleton army attempting to overtake the city, and level 5 awaits me soon enough, so it was as good a time as any to rip some ass apart. It's not very often we get our very own ally in these types of games. More or less you're just running into places solo gung-ho, but I appreciate a man who gives me some dynamite and attempts to call it Fantasy 4. Can someone please Photoshop some actual C4 with Fanta Orange drizzled all over it and send it to me on Twitter? Thanks. The Skelly siege surrounding Brighthoof was a wearisome, repetitious experience, and many bones were sent to the great big graveyard in the sky. Inside the city is where I found my first issue at hand, the lack of ammunition. Gearbox and video game developers everywhere hate sniper rifles with a burning passion, the likes of which we've never seen more prevalent in Wonderlands when I was equipped with a semi-automatic that uses 2 bullets per shot with 48 in reserves. Whoever decided that this was a good idea, I'm gonna shove some leaves down their throat, stick a handle up their ass, and use them as my own personal teapot. This is also the same game where, and I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, where we seduce a drawbridge. What am I even supposed to say about this shit? I can deal with the skeleton army invading the town and even the diamond pony that comes later. That's normal, but seducing a drawbridge, I'm just gonna pretend that didn't happen and move on. We finished clearing Main Square. I finally got a good look at my little buddy who's kind of funny sometimes, and I was deemed the hero by the diamond pony. To brighten up the sky and make it blue again, the coolest weapon in the whole game was required, the Sword of Souls. To get that, we have to murder this whole quest and everyone in it. That includes this narcissist called Zomboss. I was told to shoot her in the face a lot, and who am I to deny violence? It is very, very fun, you know. I shot Zomboss again, this time cosplaying as a badass skeleton of some kind, only for her to ruin my day. When you die, you shut up, you stay dead, and you go to a horrible place. Not send a swarm of skeletons my way. We already know where they all go when I'm done. I'm just gonna say this, being curious about swinging death traps does have its perks from time to time. Zomboss found a D tier boss to possess, bringing it down to an F tier fight, thanks to this rifle shotgun hybrid that I found. I'm only kidding, but not about this being an F tier fight. That's just the nature of trying to fit the name boss into your gamer tag. After zombie ass here retired back to the Walking Dead, she left behind a purple energy weapon of some kind, only to swerve me by still staying alive. So I found a sheath for my new sword that fit quite well. Portal 2 was awesome, and I brought the fancy sword back to its rightful place and the sky became blue once again. I upgraded my ammunition capacities, discovered the rest of my sanctuary, attempted to find some kind of happiness in this demon realm, only to lose everything I held dear. How many times in your life can you say you've made friends with a diamond horse? Yeah, that's what I thought. To enact my revenge on Dragon Loser here, I first pressed F to pay my respects and concocted a plan that involved getting across miles of the thing I both hate and need to survive. I built a ship with my bare hands. They told me it needed a blessing from a bard. I said f that and set sail anyway. Who needs a bard to bless a ship that's already built for... What the hell? Ugh. Fine, the bard it is. Somebody's been eating Cheeto Puffs and clearly forgot to clean up their mess, and then we get punished for it by having to go through a useless dungeon for virtually no reason. Gotta fill up them time slots when you can, I suppose. The next area warned me of imminent danger since I was underleveled. That's clearly not my fault, so I dove in head first and got my ass whooped in about 3 minutes flat to a bunch of mushrooms. I blame this crappy double-barrel shotgun for my failures. To rectify my inability to prove I'm at least one step above useless, I took a side quest that eventually led to fighting something called Freezicles. What a glorious name that is. Frozone here was more capable in battle than whatever this mechanical structure was. Regardless, it died, blew up, I was finally on an even playing field with everything else, and nature suddenly felt like it was healing. I found Claptrap. Luckily, he was looting no corpses this time. He attempted to sway me off my path from the bard with a side quest. I told the game no, and the bard was revealed to be Torg. Suddenly, everything in this quest felt much more worth it. While Torg was strumming his rad solo that was on par with with the second coming of Moonlight Sonata, I had all these bone-eating bags kneel before me to establish dominance. It was either myself or Brittle Bonesy Jones over there that was going to be slated to be the submissive little spoon, and that title was not going to me. The person with the gun always wins. Why do you think none of these boss fights have such opposing weaponry? The fairy Punchfather was both brick and a fairy. You can tell by the bioluminescence coursing through his wings. We got the Torg Bard back to Brighthoof, but he said we needed a jam session and I was one to oblige. I've always wanted to vibe with a drum with Torg, and now my dream was coming true. With the jam session concluded and the party undivided, it was time to set sail. That was until Torg casted a magic missile attack that went well beyond anything I've ever seen in a D&D session. First, he sinks my piece of shit and then nukes the entire ocean in front of me. We blew up the fucking ocean. You cannot give me a better moment in the entire several decade history of gaming than using a magic missile attack and blowing up the fucking ocean. That's our pinnacle. We've plateaued, we've peaked, we've hit our summit. We should just quit while we're ahead. That fucking ocean can rot in hell for all I care. With my heart rate now under 3,000, a second character class unlocked, and the fucking ocean being blown up, it was time to continue on, back into the overworld and into the Notion. God, I love that name. Wargtooth Shallows was blocked by some seaweed, and this wizard alchemist almost made us turn it to stone. To fully dispel of the seaweed, we needed some snot. Yes, snot to brew some kind of potion. One wild Pokemon battle later, and we got the vial. I was determined to not become the next area's regardless of my level, so I stormed into the shallows. For once in this challenge, there was a skeleton who wasn't actively trying to kill me, so I spared him from the great big pirate ship in the sky. There was no better place or moment than here and now to test out my double-edged machete of death. I could have said that this weapon was metal as but that's too easy, so I won't. Judging from the item list on the right-hand side of the screen, it was evident that we were building a mechanical parrot. Although on the trek there, it was becoming very apparent that every enemy felt like it was 3 levels above with how much ammunition and magic I was using. But I was determined to get through this. I would fight to my last breath. I actually did fight to my last breath more than once. My official body was finished. The new U-Station, I mean the Council of Clerics, granted me a new body, and it was here I discovered a missing toe on my right foot. With each part collected, there was only one left, though it was guarded by Mobley Dick, Biter of Crews, Scourge of Salt and Sand. Mobley Dick, Biter of Crew. Nope, I'm not gonna do that. That's stupid. I'm just gonna call him Mr. Mosby. I thank God every day that enough chests were around so that I could shoot Mr. Mosby in the face enough time without having to worry about 50 caliber ammunition running out. Now that Potty the Parrot was reconstructed, we had to recruit Bones' long-lost crew. It was rather effortless, if I'm being honest, and the only way to get them to rejoin was by hitting them with an insult that's gonna wake them up in a cold sweat 20 years down the line. The insult was so horrific and so vulgar that I can't tell you even remotely what it was about, unless demonetization is what I want, and that is not what I want, so we're moving on. I just let my glowing claymore of purple do all the offensive things with the occasional magic misclick. Nothing too major. First mate was recruited, and it was on to Swabby and Cabin Boy. While journeying there, I met the Iclops, so I know what tonight's nightmare is going to be about. You don't tell the video game protagonist no, unless you desire dire consequences. These two for brains attempted to tell me no, so I blew up their airship and brought about mass genocide to everything under their wing. I broke every bone on these peasant-ass peasants' bodies until they submitted to my will, and it was off to find the Marleyan Maiden. It was kind of cute that any of these skellies thought they had a better chance than the thousands of brothers and sisters I left crumbled in a trail behind me, but I admire their enthusiasm. At least Higginsworth is a roughly D-tier boss, much more than I can say about Zomboss. Referring to items on this pirate ship in a female tense just unnerves me a little bit.
Now screw her in tight, good plundering crew. Throw her up on the mast and see her dance in the wind. She be looking as fine as a lady can look.
Yeah, I'm officially uneasy. Not gonna lie though, I did really like the series of vignettes in Tunnel of Music. It pulled at the heartstrings a little bit, pitting Bones and LeChance against each other. It almost felt wrong, but alas, a battle must commence. Otherwise, this challenge can't be completed, and I'd rather march on. Please do not ask where my magic or shield is. I don't want to talk about it. It almost cost me in the end, but by the skin of my teeth, the sticky setting on my pistol paid dividends and got me an afterlife medal on a boss, no less. Bones and LeChance had a touching reunion, and I say good for them. They deserve all the happiness. Their happiness even seeped a little over to me as I was gifted the Jolting Peg Leg, a legendary melee weapon. That happiness quickly turned to dread when I realized just how often I found melee weapons just flying around from the pile of bodies I leave in my wake, so that was short-lived. But at least the pirates got their happy ending. This clip is important for a little later, just keep that in mind. Margravine here says there's an invisible bridge here that we can't see without some eyeglasses. The place that I just tried to cross is where the invisible bridge is located, so I know that her story is bullshit. Nevertheless, one wild encounter later, we collected the item from this required fetch quest, which turned into a telescope, and surprise, surprise, we crossed the ravine that just killed us. I hate fetch quests. To get a fancy door to open, we had to speak in Mandarin Chinese to a bunch of shrines around in this cave to cross the fucking ocean's floor. We're not going to talk about how I'm severely underleveled at this point, so here's a nice transition to something a little more compelling. Outside of coiled knights of the Royal Guard and the occasional badass lurking around, this place left a lot to be desired and reminded me too much of the never-ending skeleton army I left behind a mission prior. Though having enemies around like and settled the nerves a little bit. Maybe there was an just lying around somewhere. The ambush failed miserably quite fast. We sacrificed a fish because progressing plot is exciting, and honestly, who wouldn't sacrifice a magic fish given the opportunity? Crabs kept lining up to become Krabby Patties. I got denied another party member because my quote-unquote advisors wanted to be a basket of assholes about it. They're not even characters in this campaign, and they honestly need to shut the fuck up and let me play. And my punishment for all that was a boss named Drill, whose chains are the sea. I mean, this boss did some damage to me, but it was certainly no Millennia from Elden Ring. The strat here was just pew pew until it dies. It died, but activated its quick revive because who doesn't buy quick revive on the first round, and came back with a new nickname that I really don't care to say at this point. You guys can see it. The strat was the same, except dodge the electromagnetic stalactites. One simply does not use quick revive only once, seeing as though it's only 500 points, and it got rezzed again with a different name that is completely redundant at this point. Pew pew, dodge the giant stars and underwater mines it felt was appropriate to keep in its back pocket, and its bank vault was wide open, spewing out all the contents I could ever want. Now this next area is a bit of a shitty situation turned bitter and sour. Allow me to explain. Karnok's Wall, this lovable area with rocks, mountains, gray, beige, and more godforsaken skeletons plaguing my existence, was the penultimate landscape before the end of the game. If you haven't read a thesaurus in your lifetime, penultimate means second last, and existence is still a question I don't have the answers to. We helped a necromancer wizard thingy find a new body for his lost soul, involving barking at rocks, riding wyverns around, and shooting this son of a son of a witch until he died. Only his name was Wastard at the time, and he was quite a bastard to deal with. I only mention all this so quickly because my recording corrupted. The game froze, my recording software stopped working, and my PC spontaneously combusted into little bite-sized pieces everywhere. The end result was about an hour's worth of footage lost to the plot armor, and I'm not running through 23 levels again, so this footage is what you get. Now back to your regularly scheduled garbage video. The final area was Osugol Necropolis, and there was lots of purple everywhere, and that storm in the distance over there just screams I am the finale with the swirling alone. At least I'm battering some zombies now instead of the aforementioned enemy type that I've already said I hate like 5 times in this video already. The enemy antagonist was starting to really piss me off. He threw hex magic as a barrier to surround the city he's in, and simply touching the runes dispels the magic. Why? Because video games. We had to do that a few times since even the Wonderlands has to have some kind of common sense. If the world around me had common sense, every single piece of loot would just give me something legendary, but that's not how things work, and now I'm sad. I was downright distraught when I was forced to use a weapon that every enemy type around me just absorbed its ammunition like it was the Hulk on Saturday night at a downtown Las Vegas buffet. It took 5 minutes to replace this with a shotgun. That shotgun killed a badass, only to receive essentially the same gun once again. I was half tempted to throw this thing into the fucking ocean. My hand slapped the well of envy. The Iclops still continues to haunt my REM state. I slapped the non-existent candy asses of skeletons disguised as wraiths everywhere, and the dragon loser still continues to insult me by throwing this enemy at me over and over again. I'm gonna beat both sets of cheeks on this guy. The Hall of Heroes was our next location, and as if the game heard my thoughts and feelings, it somehow made the most disgusting enemy in the entire game cause a state of induced panic with an eyeball that explodes after homing in like a heat-seeking missile. I'm just happy I finally got some magic that allows me to send a meteor crashing down onto the faces of anything I despise. Since Dragon Boy here locks his door at night, I had to force my way into utilizing the most incredibly awesome method imaginable, a giant laser beam. I have no regrets. A smart man has a guard dog protecting his home, and begrudgingly, I have to call Dragon Guy a smart guy. He took Butt Stallion's severed head, threw it on a robot wielding a giant axe, and called it Nightmare. I guess that was technically an option. I give him props on his pun game. I can appreciate a good pun. I managed to luck out this fight and walk in with a scoped triple-barreled shotgun that set anything I didn't like into the great big graveyard in the sky. Nightmare had a few levels of health like Drill a little while ago, only with some actual difficulty. These electric currents seeping through the battlefield actually knocked me down a couple of times, but we all know who I am at this point, and that title never loses. Certainly not to a substandard boss fight. The origins of Bunker Master Tina played before my eyes. Who knew Roland was a BM on his off days? It doesn't technically show it, but who can honestly mistake that suave voice of his? Dragon Fool here tried his best with his roughly average lexicon to say Tina was terrible at her job. I didn't care, and I stormed his home because I desired to possess his fine china. I stabbed his electrical grid, massacred all his friends, straight up murdered the soul of his posthumous lover, froze only the wings on his birds, and rode his elevator without his permission. I am a sane man, I promise. I envy the people who never met this guy. I didn't expect anything from him and was still disappointed. He's a great conversation topic, don't get me wrong, just only while he's dead. It was a sticky impact double barrel shotgun versus the dragon For the first portion of this fight, it was just me draining all of my red HP bar down since that purple goo was never explained as a life cleaner. I learned my lesson very quickly, and I broke more of his electrical grid because nothing else seemed to matter. I respect a boy who has a lot of health. I don't respect a man who casually brings me lifelines when I die and spectral winged beast to restore his shield. I only got roughly 1,000 shield, that's why mine regenerates. What's his excuse? It got a little ridiculous on his part when he brought down a Dracolic to be his bullet sponge, but I think we all know how that's gonna work out in the end. With many shells fired, countless skeletons thrown at me for no reason, and wyverns that died for nothing, Dragon Jackass was defeated, a myriad of loot showered my person, and I beat Tiny Tina's Wonderlands using every weapon in the game. 517 weapons is what the final count was, a multitude of which came from random Pokemon battles and a couple of side quests. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving it a like, or if you hated it, leave it a dislike. And if you haven't already, and you like what you see on the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. Helps me out a ton. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters for making videos like this one possible. Have a good one. Peace out.